Good morning and welcome to the 2012 CCDEH Data Summit. This is the second in a series of 4 webinars brought to you by the California Conference of Directors of Environmental Health and Decade Software. Thank you to Decade for their generous contribution of the webinar tool, providing technical support during the presentation and for the webcams. I'm Leslie Linbo, Director of Environmental Health for Yolo County and the Chairperson of the IT Data Management Committee at CCDEH. The agenda today, we have, in just a moment, we'll have an Executive Director's message from Justin Milan, Executive Director of CCDEH in KHA. I'll go over some ground rules, which will help the webinar today go smoothly and assure that if you are seeking continuing education units that you receive that credit. Then we'll have our presentation by Paul Collins, California Department of Public Health, Division of Drinking Water and Environmental Management. We'll have a question and answer period moderated by Jill Cha and Stephanie Pugh from Decade Software, and then I will go over the continuing education information. And now I'd like to introduce to you Justin Milan, Executive Director of CCDEH in KHA.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Leslie. Well, as you probably would attest, I'm acting undercover. As the CCDEH Executive Director, we have been victim of a vicious international conspiracy to bring CCDEH to its knees and prevent the Executive Director from being visible on this webcam. And even some of the greatest minds in India yesterday couldn't get my webcam up and running. So fortunately, you just have my voice. Good morning and thanks for joining us for the second session. Thanks again to Leslie and Stephanie and her team at Decade and the IT committee, Paul and the many others that are participating in these sessions and that have been participating over the years with the IT committee. A little historical backdrop, I think, may be of some use because the IT committee used to be the CCDEH Data Management Committee many years ago, and it was given 3 distinct tasks. One was internal communication, and this is part of it, communicating between and amongst the local environmental health departments and the state agencies, and included our website, external communication, which again was also our website and also public relations outreach that we do. And then this section of the work that the IT committee done, which is basically data management. And that data management is a critical role for CCDEH because it not only helps manage the programs that we are involved with on a day-to-day basis, but it does 2 very important other things, and I wanted to just stress those. We are using data every day of our lives to shape and to modify the policy work that we do. It's really based on the data that we have, that we collect, that we are able to decide where we're going to put the emphasis, where the real needs are, and how we're going to ensure that we are best serving the public. And the ancillary issue, the closely tied issue to that, is it provides us for the fiscal and the policy backup and support that we urgently need. Your hired gun that I am in Sacramento, it's imperative for me to be able to use data to show that our programs are actually effective in doing what they're supposed to do. We are going to spend the last session talking about the SERS program, the Unified Program, and the Environmental Reporting System, so I won't spend time on that now, but I'll just reflect on how well we have done in moving a ball forward that 10 or 15 years ago seemed to be too big a hurdle to even tackle. And that is to develop a single platform with which we can share data and with which we will now be able to develop some metrics by which we can explain the value of our program. And without the data, we don't have metrics. So again, thanks for joining us. I'm going to be in the background, but I'm looking forward to hear the CDPH presentation and would very much want you to commend Leslie and others for putting this on. Thanks a lot, folks.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you for that message and your leadership. And with that, I'd like to introduce Paul Collins, Manager at California Department of Public Health, Department of Drinking Water.
Good morning. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Thank you for attending, and we're glad to be here. As titled, we're going to talk about the evolving data environment between existing in the county and the state and the federal, and how they're connected, how they work together. As a subtopic, I want to talk about, try to obtain a level set here on what exists. Bring everybody up to speed on what is the structure out there. Talk a little bit about what is working. Talk a little bit more about what's not working, and then conclude with what's changing and where we're going into the future here. Some objectives are, I've mentioned, understanding the current data management and reporting environment. It's fairly complex. It does differ significantly sometimes at the county level, and we'll want to cover some of those areas. We want to identify the inherent problems and continuing problems we have with these reporting mechanisms. And then we'd like to look towards the goal of moving our data environment towards a web-based environment. Now, background here is the regulatory environment is actually starts off with the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act for us. That same act is essentially adopted by the state so that the regulations tend to be exactly the same. It defines the regulatory environment, and it also defines certain data collection requirements that primacy agencies, which we are one to the federal government, need to meet. And so to measure compliance, the state has created over a period of decades a fairly large and diverse data collection system process. Now, at the state level, our two main applications, many of you may know, as PICME, which deals with permits, inspections, compliance, and enforcement, and WQI3, which is our water quality database. Now, at the county level, many of you are on the Decade Software Envisioned application, but some of the counties also have local applications. Now, I put this schematic in there so that you could look at it later. I wanted to pass on to you some idea of what the process looks like, where data goes, how it goes, and how records get back to you. And we'll talk about some of the inherent processes there that are problematic. One, as you see coming in here, is that the system utilizes email for its delivery process. And that is a slow and problematic and often size-limited and often security-limited process that probably will not last much longer. And then in the backfeeds to these things, or the backflows back to the counties, tell you about the error rejection process. Now, and all of that data eventually gets uploaded into our mainframe database, PICME. Now, we have a parallel structure for the environmental health laboratories, what we would call the water laboratories, for those that both have their own LIMS system, which is comparable in the LPA world to the Envisioned system, and our other smaller systems, which is comparable to our right-on laboratories. The whole idea there, though, is that the data is created at the laboratory, delivered in an electronic specification, and it's pre-edited errors are rejected, we send back a series of reports for good and bad records and eventually load them. As you can see, there are tie-ins between PICME and WQI to keep them in sync with each other. This describes what the biweekly processing here is, what we internally call the backfeed process. Why is there a backfeed process? The backfeed process is there because the state districts have already moved their inventory process to SDWIS. And so we have to reconcile that data with the LPA data that's in SDWIS, so we actually backfeed it on a bi-weekly basis. Okay. By the end of the year, we expect the state districts to have completed both violations in lead and copper data migration to SDWIS. The issue that we have with this, though, is that we now have LPA data in PICME, and we have the state's data in SDWIS that we're backfeeding so that we can report it on to our mandated federal quarterly reporting. And this is that process. So when we have backfed all the data into PICME and the LPA data is up to date, and we have gone out and collected the lead and copper data files from the state districts, all of that is put into a federal system called FedRep. From that, FedRep reads that data, severely edits that data, and rejects a lot of records. Their edits are much tougher than our edits are, let's put it that way. And so we do get a fair amount of rejects at that point, and once it rejects at that point, it does not make it into the federal system. So it behooves us to go back to where all those rejects come from, and they could be LPAs or state districts, they could be in inventory, they could be in actions data, they could be in lead and copper, and go through the process again to try to keep that up to date. The good file coming out of FedRep is moved via an XML format file to the CDX node, which is an EPA nationwide data node, where the data is eventually loaded into the federal ODS system, where it'll be processed through a data warehouse. And some of that data you may be familiar with ends up in a application out at EPA called EnviroFacts. Most of our relationship with EnviroFacts is disputing the data it has and why it's not in sync with the data we have. So it's somewhat infamous for being out of sync with both the state data and with the county data. But that's the nature of a long linear change process of getting data through multiple databases, and which then the data is no longer in synchronization. Okay. The third leg of that data that we owe the feds under the primacy agreement is lead and copper reporting. For the state districts, we have out there an application that they bring in their lead and copper data, they key it in, and then on a quarterly basis, we bring it up to a centralized database, produce the lead and copper file, and send it out to the feds. The problem with that process is there's something missing. There has not been an update on the lead and copper data from the LPAs because there is no process there to do it, and we only have data that was initially done about 5 years ago, maybe even a little over 5 years now. And there is a regulatory requirement for some LPA systems, primarily community water systems of a certain size, to do lead and copper, ongoing lead and copper reporting. So that's something we are missing at this point. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is how the LPAs agencies and people there are able to communicate to these systems that we just reviewed. The connection is from the technology agency's data center, and it can give you access to PICME and WQI. That access will allow you to see and or update inventory, that's basically system and source data and treatments, and actions in PICME. Mostly used in PICME now to see that the data there is consistent with the data held at the county system. Or you can have access to the other mainframe systems to look at water quality analysis and we'll come back to this one for further elucidation, the monitoring schedules in the water quality information system. This telecommunications access will also allow you to drill down to the DWIM environment, that's the drinking water network, and for direct access to SDWIS. Now, the problem here is remembering how to access can be a challenge. And one of the challenges is that if it's used infrequently, you forget how to do it. The process requires an account ID, it requires a password, and it requires an electronic token from our Citrix vendor. Now, the problem we're having with this lately is they are up to requirements at California Technology Agency, and you need to log in more frequently or your account will be wiped out. And I know the small water systems unit people are dealing with a lot of accounts that need to be reestablished. The rule basically is you have to log in every 60 days. But I would like to remind you to log in at least every month. So I would put it at the top of my calendar on the first of each month. Even if you don't have to, at least log on to one of the systems to keep your account active. Here's a schematic of that system. You log in via your browser, via Citrix connection, the Citrix server. You go through the firewall. You get into the CDPH network, the larger network that takes you to water quality information or to PICME. You can also, as I said, drill down until you get to the SDWIS application, and you can directly connect to SDWIS. Los Angeles County is one of those that frequently does that. Okay, I want to discuss some of the ongoing issues that we're having with all of these systems. One of the processes we've been doing now and redoing now for some time is an inventory reconciliation. And I've recently talked to the Small Water Systems unit again, and we're actually feeling pretty good about where we stand on inventory reconciliation from our perspective. We're going to be doing more work on that because we'd like to know where we stand on that issue from your perspective, to see if what we have really reflects the reality you know. Okay, and one of the things, that's a PICME issue, and inventory resides in PICME. Basically, we're talking about systems and sources and appropriate treatments. All the sources attached to a system need to have what we call source classes. A source class is a name for a set of similar sources that live in similar environments that would have similar water quality monitoring requirements. So if you are in one source class, you will basically have a schedule set for all the sources in that source class. I hope that's clear. One of the other problems in PICME that we continually have, and this is what leads to what we call the SNCs, which are significant non-complying systems, is because while violations may be recorded, closing actions, otherwise known as enforcement actions, certain types of enforcement actions can close out a violation. If the closing action is not linked correctly to the violation, it won't close out. The system will still be in violation, and it will be listed on the Federal Register and in Envirofax as a significant non-complier. And all of that could be due simply to a missing close association between the enforcement and the violation. Those are called associated violation IDs in your world. Other issues that we're moving towards and been working on for the last year is to ensure that we have schedules for every active source out there. A schedule has been created. It requires, to start it, it requires the source class be listed in PICME. It requires that the data is moved correctly into water quality. A schedule is automatically created from the source class you gave it and from the data we have collected from the environmental health laboratories. So those two data streams come in, mix together, and create an updated schedule. As it turns out, the schedule is the only way we know whether we have all the data that's required. Now, I'm going to let that sink in because we're going to come back to that over and over again as a key point. If we don't have an accurate schedule, we do not know if we have some of your data, all of your data, most of your data, or virtually none of your data. There's no way to evaluate that unless it's compared to a standard, and the schedule is that standard. Okay, where are we going? Well, as slowly the state is moving in this technology direction in the area where I would suppose the commercial and outside world has been for the last 15 years in moving towards web-based technology. So I want to talk about three areas of web-based technology that we have or we're moving into. They are, first, the DRINC portal, which is a site where we have applications listed and where we do data intake. SDWIS, the SDWIS we're running right now, is largely a web-based technology, at least on its input side. It's not truly a web-based technology overall because many of the administrative actions are anything but web-based. And also, we'll look to the future. We expect 2 years from now that the current SDWIS system will be radically overhauled and replaced. And it'll be replaced with what's known right now as the next-gen system. And we'll talk more about what that's going to look like. Okay, quickly I want to characterize what's out at the DRINC portal and why it's relevant. Okay, the DRINC portal is the site that we established with the University of California in April of 2009. It's run by DWIN staff. It looks and feels much like any of the California websites, and it's an area where many of our partners go to collect data or work with us on other applications. So here we have, these are the prospective DRINC portal users. You can see we have many state partners. We have the LPA as a partner. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We have the Water Quality Monitoring Council, which was established by legislation as a council to oversee the coordination and utilization of water data throughout the state. And we're a member of the Water Quality Council, and you'll see we are going to establish another site at the DRINC portal for the Water Quality Council. We also have working with us obviously our public water systems and our environmental health laboratories, the academic establishment, environmental protection community, AQUA, and many others. US EPA and Cal EPA use it for data collection and transfer. There's a quick schematic. I'm not going to waste too much time with you on this. We're going to move along as fast as we can here. But you can go back and look at how the system works out there, and and then we'll talk now a little bit about how we expect to use it. First thing we're envisioning using out there is that we are going to change how water quality data is collected from the laboratories. We're going to do a direct entry method, either by keyboard or by batch file, into the portal. We also have running out there a parallel SDWIS operation that we use for data checking. We have established previously what's known as the NEIEN Node. NEIEN, we'll talk a little bit about later, but it's the National Environmental Information Exchange Network, essentially a set of protocols for the exchange of data between state and federal agencies. Now, we also have been out there for the last 3 years doing the annual report. Many of you know it, we call it the electronic annual report now. We have used that process for the last 20 years with state water systems, and this was the first year we've introduced the annual reporting system to the LPAs. We have some legacy systems that you may be familiar with out there. DUSAP was the system for source water protection program out there, where we did a lot of GPSing of the wells. We have the technical, managerial, and financial tune-up application that water systems can take to measure themselves in those 3 areas and see where they need strengthening. We have a pre-application out there for was SRF, Prop 50, 84, and ARA funding, where we took applications, electronic online applications from water systems and agencies for infrastructure funding via the drinking water program. One of our new tools out there is the Public Water System Boundary Tool that we do in conjunction with the Environmental Health Investigations Branch and Cal Warren from Emergency Response. So we'll talk a little bit more about that one later, because we are looking to map the boundaries of every public water system in the state. That's our high-level goal, and we're focusing largely on community systems right now, but we would like to have them all. Okay, one of the things we're doing out there is, real quickly, and I'll get by this, is that we will redirect the laboratory data out to the portal so that we can bring in water quality analysis results directly there, bypassing the current email process. Okay, and as I mentioned, this is what the opening page to the SDWIS system looks like. It's largely a web-based application, and it is our designated database of record that we're moving to application. So we're doing it slowly, but we expect to finish this year with the state districts, and rather rapidly after that, move the LPA data out of the PICME process and into SDWIS directly. Not only pick up the data that's in PICME now, but redirect the current data flow from LPA systems, that's both the Visions and all of the other systems, and move them directly into SDWIS. Okay, and I talked a little earlier about EPA. We have a project right now with EPA for a NEIEN, to upgrade the NEIEN Node and start to be able to do the data intake at that portal. The NEIEN Node is one that integrates with all the nationwide EPA databases. Annual reporting, otherwise known to many of you know it as the electronic annual report. It has a lot of inventory data in it, but it also covers emergency and business contacts. It has an area that we're dealing with water utilization, drought preparedness, and response. And it's also the portal that we're using to pick up the consumer confidence reports in an electronic format can be uploaded here so that we can use them in the Safe to Drink portal. Okay. And we will continue to integrate and maintain the current systems that we have out there. The new one that we're just working on now is a joint project with the State Water Resources Control Board, with ACWA and several other partners to build the portal that was mandated by the legislature to basically answer the question. At the top level, we are going to answer the question, is our water safe to drink? And I think many of you might have a problem with saying safe and trying to define that technically. But so we are going to talk about, what it takes to make water safe. But this Safe to Drink portal is integrated out there. It'll provide vast amounts of water quality data to public, the water policy decision makers, and to researchers and academics. It utilizes some of the latest GIS components, and it's hierarchically structured in that the top level is fairly straightforward approach that will answer many of the basic questions in Safe to Drink. Is your water safe to drink? And the primary document we'll use at that level is the CCR. And that's why it's important for us to get CCRs from all of the systems that are required to do one. And the portal, these are some of the things under that portal. You'll be able to get a characterization of any of the public water systems. Here you see one with the boundaries done, and basically there's talking about the characterization here is really a statement of inventory and other assets that are out there. You can get to water quality information out there, and some of it in ways that you may not have seen before. Here's gallons used per capita for each day by county. So you can look at the counties that have the least or most or the average amount of water usage, which under the terms of the current drought will become more relevant, I think, and more relevant in time as clean potable water sources probably become more difficult to attain. The biggest question we want to answer in the Safe to Drink portal is, we are required to answer, is our water safe to drink, but we want to tell the story about how drinking water is kept safe. So we're going to spend a lot of time and energy in trying to discuss the role of engineers out there, both at the water systems and at the state and at the county levels, and scientists, and what they do to keep water safe to drink. We're going to talk about the role of infrastructure and how we're funding it to maintain safe facilities. We're going to talk about the reporting requirements on water systems, how MCLs and public health goals are established, and how public notification works. So it's a tool about drinking water and all of its aspects. Some of the benefits of this system are that it's accessible by all of DWEAM staff, that's state staff, county staff, all our partners, and the public. It accommodates, we can take in data entry and report and do reporting. And basically, we will be integrating, we have a partner at UC Davis called the Information Center for the Environment, who have great capabilities in GIS, and we hope to utilize them to tell the story of how drinking water is kept safe. So we're looking for support from the LPAs who spend a lot of their time, effort, and precious resources in keeping water safe to drink. Another current concern we have is there is a very large interest in the states right now about the viability and the safety of small water systems. So CDPH is undertaking a plan to address these issues. Many of you may have heard about some of the recent reports that the state was involved in, that we were involved in producing. The nitrate report on the Tulare Basin and Salinas Valley has garnered a lot of press as of late, continues to actually create a lot of questions and a lot of activity. There's a secondary report that's not as well known under the AB 2222 banner that reports communities with detectable contaminants in their water. And that's a lot larger number, as you may imagine. Here at DWIM, at the Drinking Water Program, we have a direct involvement from the governor's office in these issues of potable water supply and environmental justice in these small water systems. There's not a week goes by that the director of our division chief are not called to the governor's office to update them on where we are in dealing with this issue. And in some of these cases, these are very difficult and nearly intractable problems. Okay, the purpose of that plan is that we are going to take specific steps to bring these systems, and we have targeted 168 of them right now, into sustainable compliance. Doesn't mean getting them safe now. It means getting them on a path that we would look at a TMF path, that they have a sustainable and viable operation and can produce potable water. And I think many of you know how difficult that might be. And here's some of the background on that. While 98% of Californians now are served water that meet all the primary health standards, 57,000 people are now served by small water systems that fail on one or more of these standards. You look at where these systems are and what these systems are, they are predominantly disadvantaged communities and or rural systems that cannot charge rates sufficient to maintain adequate infrastructure that would produce potable water. That's why these problems are so intractable. Of the 2,300 small community water systems, the 160, well, we moved it up, we've added 168 are in violation. So our standard there is 92%. We want to, in 3 years, move that to 95% compliance. So we're concentrating right now on small water systems with the most pressing compliance issues. That's 63 of them that we are targeting. We are going to target them in efforts in funding, assistance, and data quality. We have to know what the data environment is on all of these systems. Okay, so from our point of view, we're going to focus on the data-driven issues. And the first main issue we have that we have been talking about, I think, for at least 2 decades now, is the missing data dilemma. Current targets for those small water systems are based on our current data. And we target systems with MCL exceedances. So that means we must know the systems that have MCL exceedances, which means we must know that we have all of the necessary data from all of those systems. And the only way we know that we have all the data so we can make an evaluation is that we know we have approved schedules, they are up to date, and they have no past dues on them. If there are past dues, we are going to follow up on those issues. So here we go again. How do we get to complete schedule? All active sources have to have source class codes. We're getting very close on this. You've been working with the Small Water Systems Unit on getting this done. We still have a ways to go. The problem is to get there requires all. And that all those active sources then have generated schedules that are reviewed and confirmed and corrected if they're not right. Then all those schedules will be reviewed for timeliness and completion. Basically, we want to know whether we have an ongoing data issue with them. And if we do have an ongoing data issue with them, we have a unit here called the Monitoring Evaluation Unit that is going to work with our Small Water Systems Unit, and we are going to start contacting the LPAs, if necessary, the water systems. And one of the things we do fairly well, I think, is we have a constant connection to the laboratories. So if the tests have been done and we don't have the data, we are going to go out hunting the data and bring it in. And if the tests haven't been done, we're going to up the ante on making sure that those tests get done. We have done this with the large water systems, state districts. It has been effective. It has taken a lot of work. It has taken a lot of time. And we'll have to go back over and over and over on this process. You can't go through it one time. You basically are looking at improving the whole data transmission process so that it will meet these standards. So I guess the one thing we're asking for there is your cooperation in this process, your patience with us as we continue to iterate the problem, and the persistence to finish the job on this so that we can have accurate data that actually says what the state of those water systems is at the time. Okay, we're going to be moving. I want to talk about the LPA data process and the move towards SDWIS. We've got about 12 minutes here, so I'm going to try to pick it up. Currently, we are testing the migration of LPA data in PICME right now to SDWIS. That's basically a conversion process. We're reviewing the errors generated, and we're notifying Small Water Systems Unit of these problems, who are in kind talking to you all out there about problems with the data. First off, we need a clean migration, conversion of data into SDWIS. It has much more rigorous edit requirements. We've got to improve the data quality. The other thing we're testing now, we're taking the current data flow from the LPAs and testing it by loading it directly into SDWIS. We're looking at reviewing the errors. We'd like to see if we could do this without a change in the format. Ideally, we would change the format to pick up more fields that we don't have, but that requires a lot of work on a lot of other people's systems, and so we're going to initially see if we can bring it in as is. And then we're going to test a direct entry of this data in the XML format, and there we're working with Decade Software to obtain these XML files, the format, contain these type of data files out of Envisioned and load them directly to SDWIS. Because at the final load into SDWIS, it reads XML. There's a really fairly complicated process of moving the current format, CSV, comma delimited files, into SDWIS. They have to all be converted to XML. We're hoping to get good XML files from the LPA systems that use Envisioned right now. One more thing out there on the portal is an application called Drinking Water Watch. It's a very easy to use and it's the product. It's an application that reports on the data in SDWIS. It's created by EPA, and we have found that a lot of people like it. It gives you a quick response and lays out everything you need to know, let's say, about a system. And it should be a very useful feedback process for LPAs to look at their data in SDWIS. Currently, to do that, you'd have to log in to PICME. Here, it's a much faster process. Okay, the far distant future, 2 years. Extremely long-term planning at the state is about at the 2-year line. We are currently working with federal EPA on building the specifications for the new SDWIS application we talked about called NextGen. One of the features of this application is that it will be cloud-based, which is really a meaningless term bandied around a lot these days. That means it sits somewhere else. You don't know where it sits. Doesn't really matter where it sits. We always say Utah. It sits in Utah because that's way out there. Doesn't matter. And your access to it is through a secured extranet, which is to say it doesn't reside at the county. It doesn't reside at the state. It resides at some data center somewhere, like Google. And CDPH is working on some specific areas in there that will work for the LPAs. Specifically, we're asking for a batch-based upload process for inventory, actions, and samples. When they first built SDWIS, the only way to get data in was through keying it in directly. And the current SDWIS shows that limitation in the way that we're forced to do batch entry through a series of difficult processes. And so we're going to be seeking both the ability to read CSV, comma delimited files, and XML format files for county data. And so far they've agreed to do that. So that brings me to the end. I want to thank you for your participation and your persistence in protecting public health in California, because that's something we feel here, that it's not just a job, it's about something larger than that. And thank you.
All right. This is Stephanie from Decade. We're going to go ahead and move on to the questions and answer session.
While we're waiting for questions, I would like to talk to you about the electronic annual report. And we have met several times with CCDEH, and we're targeting community water systems, and we're hoping to have all community water systems under LPA jurisdiction done by the end of September. There's a lot of rate information in there and conservation information in there that is becoming very critical, and this is a process by which we can evolve new data streams. So I'm sure somebody has questions on the electronic annual report, at least.
We've got a question from Jerry Sipes. Jerry, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line. You can go ahead.
Hey, Paul. Thank you very much. This is Jerry Sipe up in Plymouth County, and I appreciate your participating on this webinar.
Our pleasure.
You focused a lot on the data collection through the laboratory, and I'm kind of wondering, maybe as a out there kind of next frontier, next horizon issue, if there's any way to assimilate some of the annual inspection report into an electronic format, because we're spending at the local level a lot of resources providing inspections and sort of a written-based inspection report that really doesn't provide the bang for the buck on what the level of effort the LPAs are putting in. Any thoughts on that?
Now, let me make sure I understand the question, because one of the things that has come up continuously in the past is to have basically a tablet-driven inspection form that field people could take out to the sites and basically complete their inspection report out in the field while they're doing it, or at least a good portion of it. And that is something we're still looking at. There is one version of it from EPA. We looked at it, but we were less than whelmed about it, so we didn't do it. Now, am I on the right track for your question?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm wondering just how we can capture some of the work and value that's being done on the annual inspection or the 5-year inspection, 3-year inspection, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's a huge amount of workload that the LPAs are providing, yet we're not really able to assimilate that data in any meaningful way that can be reported up through to the state and to the feds.
We do have a process we're looking at that basically runs off I don't think of the right application now, but a forms-driven process that you would take out to the field, fill it in, and when you come back, it would be uploadable directly to a database. Now, how that would actually work with the LPAs and their systems or with Envisioned, we're not sure yet. We know we're looking at it for the same reasons I think you're interested in it. Inspections and writing up the reports is taking too much time that we can't afford. Even though it's one of the most critical areas the engineers perform, it's taking a lot of time, and we need to do it in a more efficient way.
Thank you very much, indeed.
All right, thanks.
We've got another hand raised here from Lorena Childress. We'll go ahead and open up your line. Go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, because we've just recently started having a handful of our systems that have begun reporting using the EARs through the DRINC website and so on and so forth. My experience has been, even with the small number of those that we've received and started reviewing, that it does take a considerable amount of time because the format is radically different with what comes in off the DRINC website versus the comparable data collection screens in Envisioned Connect, for example. And my question is basically is there a, say, for example, an XML file for a page layout format that would parallel the data entry experience that is being proffered to us for the comparison workflow, at least, so that I can take less than an hour to review each one that comes in and get feedback back to the systems for corrections? Because I know I haven't done a lot of them so far, but they're pretty time intensive to review them. I'm assuming at some point, hopefully, there'll be some data mapping that occurs to parallel up the field entry experience and have it a more automated process eventually from what was discussed. But at the current time, is there anything in place or something that is coming to help streamline that comparison process?
Okay, let me see if I understand it. There is a back office process now that compares the current EAR submitted by a water system with their existing data, in the sense that, you know, once you've done the data once, it would then basically highlight the new versus the old side by side on your desktop, so you can look at both at the same time, left, right, and make those comparisons and see what has changed. I'm not sure. Have you seen how that works?
Not directly. What I'm speaking of is trying to compare it to what we have entered in Envisioned Connect, because we do our monthly reports up to the state from Envisioned Connect. And so since the systems are submitting it to the EAR, it doesn't seem to make sense to have one contact listed in Envisioned Connect and they list two different contacts when they turn in the EAR. And I'm not sure which system ends up overriding which one if they submit it through the EAR through the DRINC website, and then the next month we're turning around and sending a different information contact from the electronic data transfer out of Envisioned Connect directly to the state.
Okay, let me go to one area there. Nothing on the EAR updates your database in Envision, or
Correct.
for that matter, our SDWIS or PICME database directly. I mean, the initial purpose was to collect that data electronically and utilize it. We are building some connections now to take EAR data and update our database of record with it. And that's primarily in the contacts area because it's an area where we have a very large deficit with the LPAs. But we don't change any data based upon the EAR at this point in time. Now, our own people are asking for us to do exactly that. If it comes in and they vet it, then they want it to update the database. But that doesn't happen at this point, and it certainly does not happen with your systems in the county. So we're not changing it in that way, but we are trying to, where the data parallels what you have in the county, it's only meant for comparison to see if you want to change your local system. It's a data collection process to aid you in updating your own system, but we don't do it automatically, electronically. Did I get to your question? I don't think I'm addressing it.
It's kind of at the crux of it, but I guess basically what I'm asking is there a more efficient way to do that vetting process?
In the county, okay. Off the top of my head, I don't know of one, but I will go back to the staff who work on it and see what we could do. We may have to work with Decade on this issue. But for those who have Envisioned systems, obviously it would be hard for us to know the other systems that well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, it looks like we've run out of time for our question and answer session, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Leslie to wrap it up. Thank you, Paul.
All righty.
Thank you, Stephanie. It sounds like there's a lot of feedback, and I hear feedback for requests for streamlining in the public water program. So I think that's an area that we may want to work on in the future through the CCDEH IT and Data Management Committee in partnership with the state. So I do want to mention continuing education units for those that are seeking them. Go to ccdeh.com. There is a $10 administrative processing fee. You can pay online, or you can mail in a check with the registration form found at the CCDEH website. In order to receive continuing education units, there is an evaluation survey that needs to be filled out. And then also for your information, or if you want to share this or view it in the future, this WebEx will be available at ccdeh.com. And the next slide, please. And your feedback is valuable. The same feedback form that you would use for continuing education is also used for general feedback, and we want to hear your feedback about how this webinar went, if it was useful to you, if there's a future topic that you'd like to see on a webinar, we would like to hear that. And please join us. I invite you to join us for our next two sessions. We have mobile workforce on July 31st with Ricardo Serrano and Joyce Benefield from Solano County. So please join us 9 o'clock, July 31st. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye now.
Goodbye.